I like rocks. Oh, what's up? Welcome to our channel. Over Triggered. Perfect name for the best deck in the standard meta, in my opinion, right now. If you just wanna throw some rocks and do stupid stuff and go pa 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 pa, this is the video right for you. If you wanna know more about my matchups and stuff at BCS Germany, which I piloted this deck to 3rd place, check out the vlog, the last video on this channel. And now I'm gonna show you which card I played and why, and etc, etc. As you can see here, I played the beautiful World Gravidia. The reason should be clear by now, since we play World Gravidia since over a year. This order just lets you push so hard in the first turn when they give you a CB, and you can get so many advantages through that, and I will go on further on later. First, what I already showed you, we play World. So this right line started, doesn't matter, with Rutis, Cubisa into Nordlinger is just too good to not play, cause the Shed Army token is in a turn 2 15k booster or attacker depending on your hand, and usually you can do like 3 swings when you draw half decent, also depending going first or second, and then you can push your opponent already to 2 damage or something, maybe even 3 depending on the trigger. And 3 damage is such a good number for this deck, because every time you swing with Nordlinger, if you use 3 meteors, you get the crit, so it's already have to guard unless they bait. I don't check at least 1 crit, otherwise they would be dead. Then of course one of the most important cards, Persona Ride, just is a +3, cause you, or even more, cause you draw from Persona and you get 2 meteors out, and then through the 2 meteors you can draw 2. It's just too good. Then talking about meteors, I'm gonna show you the Meteor lineup first, and that is 4 times big meteor and 7 small meteors. This ratio is now pretty solved out, almost everybody plays it. Reason behind 7 small ones is you don't want to miss the draw with the Persona, and that's it. If you play 6, you will have Persona rides where you can't fetch 2, only 1. And if you play 7, there is just more stable that you can place more meteors. And with the 7-4 lineup, it's also possible to 3 times 5 meteors. Not that hard if you get enough Bakubiritos, because standalone these meteors could technically be 15, but you want to discard some, and some will get into damage zone. That stuff just happens. But I also pulled off 3 times 5 meteors with this lineup. Then the 1 aura to search, and you hope to not draw it. Then we get to the rear guards, and of course we play for Bakubiritos. Bakubirito is just a strong card. It's a magical number by himself. It's 18 with Persona 28, so already a front they have to guard with, just to get like 1 card guard. And what really helped me in BCS Germany is when I see the opponent's deck and then I know what triggers they play. I really like to put behind the Bakubirito on the Persona Ride a 5k trigger, so it's 33. So even without any triggers, if I have the bad luck and I know they have a front in hand or could have a front in hand, just putting a 5k trigger behind Bakubirito on Persona Ride turns screws them over most of the times, because they have to guard with another 5k or another 15k even. And if they put like best case for them, or they have a 5k, that's still a rear guard which they're missing on the next turn. So playing around magical numbers depending on your opponent's deck is very important with Gravidia, because your deck is just magical numbers. Then we go on to what others don't like to play. Usually they play, they don't like the ratio. Usually they play 3 to 4 Stanners. I only play 2, but I play 2 Barringers. Most people only play 1. Reason behind the 2-2, and now you're thinking, wait, there should be more rear guards. Yeah, I will show them later. First gonna explain why 2 Barringers, because one of your worst matchups, Gravidia in my opinion doesn't have this one worst matchup, except the mirror match. Mirror match is pretty hard because whoever goes first has a huge advantage, and they retire all of your rear guards, and you need to have your rear guards. That's why also this is a 2, cause in the other matchups, yeah, I don't really... Yeah, it's nice, it's a good 10k shield for sure, that's why it's a 2 off. But Barringer is not only with the skill a 20k, with the continuous skill, it's also a +1. And in the mirror match, you don't play the late game, probably. Because you're gonna deck out and stuff, you don't have to worry for that. You just resolve Barringer and draw a card, and you just call 2 rearguards to counter the Bakubirito crit skill effect. And with Barringer you just get another card in hand which you can guard with or even call. It just gives you more hand, and the mirror match is very... it takes a lot of hand. And Barrow Magnus is the same for it. Barrow Magnus can be really hard to play for Gravidia, and there Barringer is just great because you get so much soul for free. You can just soul blast it and get more resources to draw into more rear guards or triggers to guard. Stanna, just great. Usually 15k with 10k shield, except as I have done, I didn't have 5 orders on my 3rd turn because I bricked kinda, and that lost me the game actually. But yeah, stuff can happen. And we go on for the grade 1 rearguards, and I play 2 Bobalmine. Bobalmine, at first I didn't play it because I also don't like the thing was, if they damage deny me, I just stack up meteors and gather resources and swing. So they don't give me resources and I can still attack and stuff like that. But Bobalmine, like, the players got more advanced with damage denying and at the right times. So I decided to pick 2 Bobalmines into my main deck. It's nice if people know how to play against Gravidia, I would say. In the mirror match is also pretty good. There is a special play you can do in the mirror match, or even in other matches, but in the mirror match it's pretty spicy. When the opponent is on 3 damage, you can swing with Gravidia, use the skill, so he gets a critical at least. They're gonna PG or guard it, cause they don't wanna die to 1 crit, of course. And then if you don't check enough criticals to get the unit to lethal, you just stop. You had your drive checks, you took some cards out of their hand, and you just stop, because if they don't have counterblast, they can't do anything. And then on your next turn you do the same, and then the next turn you do the same, till they don't have the resources or you get the triggers to have every attack on lethal or something. And there Bobalmine comes in handy when you don't have enough counterblast for that spicy play. You just put it behind the rearguard and boost, and so it goes to soul and gives you the counterblast again. So you can repeat that line of play again. And it's pretty sketchy. That was actually the play which won me the top 8, cause I played against Nirvana and I didn't check any triggers, and he was pretty big on hand, so I knew I couldn't defeat him. He will already use 3 counterblast, so I just swung 3 times with the Vanguard, and he always guarded. Then I had 1 time a crit with double meteor, so I put everything on 1 rearguard, because it would be lethal attack. He had to guard, and then I passed. And in the same turn, the next turn and the next turn, till I won them. That actually won me the game, so Bobalmine can come in handy for these plays. Then for the last card I played a spicy tech 1 Abee, which never come up. Actually it did come up once, but there I misplayed. I shouldn't have called Abee, I should have used the order, cause he damage denied me from the first turn, so I had the order in hand. I didn't play it on a grade 2 turn. But this is also against the mirror and the Barrow matchup, and I only played 1 Barrow. I didn't face any Gravidia mirrors. This is really nice for the mirror match, cause you want to push them really quickly, and they want to do the same to you. So you have the CB open. Most of the times you don't know where to use the CB, because you just have open CB and you can utilize it. And when you call this down, and usually you don't want to have 3 rearguards, but you can also call it in front row with a persona, or if you know this is your final push turn and you want to go all out, or you know that the opponent doesn't have a Bakubirito right now in hand, you can just call it and it's just a +1. Usually you have the 3 meteors after persona riding, because you get 2, one either you have in hand or on field. The skill was always live for me. Didn't work out because I didn't have the matchups, but yeah, it's like a spicy tech, I would say. Personally, if I wouldn't play the spicy tech, I would just play one more bubble mines, because the bubble mines did come in really handy if you play against players who really know how your deck works. And also a quick note on bubble mine, you don't have to use the skill if you don't need a CB and you know they can't retire it. It's just an extra booster, which is really strong to get even better numbers, because Gravidia is all about high numbers and go as high as you can get with the numbers. So keeping it on the field till you really need it is really strong. Then we go to the classic stuff. 4 PGs, of course, just good. One legendary overtrigger, which I never checked offensively in the whole tournament. In 6, 7, 8, in 9 rounds I never checked him offensively, and I checked the OT defensively, let me think, 2 times. Once it won me the game, check out the vlog, why? Really spicy match. And the other time it lost me the game because it damage denied myself and I couldn't push because of that. And the opponent didn't have lots of hands, so OT won and lost me a game. So it's not like the whole tournament with this deck was not a trigger fiesta. I really checked not good. I was under average from all the playtesting, and I played like hundreds of games with this deck. Take this as a motivation for your Gravidia players out there who think, oh, it's just checking triggers and oh, crit, front. It's not like that. If you know how to play it against the opponent, you can even reach numbers without triggers. But of course, triggers can win you the game randomly. So that's why I think this is one of the best decks, because even without triggers, you can be strong. Then free fronts, of course. If you check it with 5 meteors, it's just huge, because your numbers are crazy. Especially when you have Bakubirito with the crit skill already on. This card is like crazy. That's why free fronts. But of course, 8 criticals, and I played like this. Because I never ever need the soul, not even in the prison matchup. I don't know where I would need it. I only play 2 of, because when I have to boost Bakubirito with an 8k booster, which I play 3 of, it can come in handy, especially when, let me show you the numbers real quick. You have a Barringer here, and you have a Bakubirito. Let me put it aside real quick. If you have a Barringer, you usually want to put the 8k boosters behind the 15k or 10k units, and you want to put the 15, 10 and 5ks beneath a 13k unit for magical numbers. In that case it would only be triggers or Shadow Armito. So in some cases your rearguard gets retired and you already have here, for some reason, because you didn't have a Bakubirito, you have a 10k. You could still call it here, get the trigger here. So what this does is putting it to magical numbers. It would be a 15k with the skill at 20k, and now it reaches the 23k mark with Persona 33. 34 doesn't matter with the guarding value, but it passes that 5k mark, and then you can, after the attack, put this to soul, give this 2k, so this is a 10k booster. That's the only reason I play 2 of, because in some rare scenarios that can happen. Otherwise, I prefer the 5k triggers, because as I said, boosting Bakubirito or even your Gravidia is really strong, especially in the first turns when you know the opponent doesn't want to get rushed, like Barrow doesn't want to get rushed. No, not Barrow exactly. Like some decks can go on with low CB, especially also in the mirror match. You want to guard as much as possible. But when you are putting in the early turns beneath your Rootis or your Kubisa, you can put down any of these 5k triggers, and then there's no scenario where a 15k shield is a no pass. It's always a 1 to pass, and that's kind of a mind game, cause most of the times you don't check one trigger on one check, but it could technically happen. So there was like a 30% chance that you check a trigger on these one drive check turns. But the opponents won't guard it because they don't want to risk it, they want to save the value for later game. So you can rush in with damage, doesn't matter if you get a trigger or not. If you get a trigger, great, amazing. It just plays some mind games, and sometimes it can even win you games because they throw a 15k because they still want to guard it, or 10k, like 2 5ks in that case. Then you check a trigger, and from there on it's almost GG because they wasted cards and still get 2 damage because most of the times you check a crit. That's for the crit trigger lineup. Let's put this together. Then for the heals, 3 standard heals and 1 time the crit heal. First I had this at 2, so I played like 2-2 of the heals, but this card is only really good in certain matchups like Mirror or Barrow. That's also why I put 1 off in here, because I think in the other decks aren't as such as a threat. Barrow only if high rolling, of course, but they can high roll you into oblivion, and you just don't want to lose that if that stuff happens. As you also in the mirror match, because this is a 25, with this it's a 40, so your Vanguard is on 53. Usually when they persona and they attack and don't do 5 meteors, they are on 38 and you are on 53, so that's already a 2 to pass, so that is mostly enough. Because Gravidia can bait, it depends on deck size. You also have to play around that, of course, with checking triggers and counting them, stuff, and etc. Alright, now I'm gonna show you real quick what my turn 2 game is, because that's, I think, the most important part of this deck, how well you can play your turn 2 game. Everything after that is like throwing meteors in your opponent's face and swinging with all you have and hope they don't guard and you have good trigger checks. And it was a little bit sarcastically, of course you can do some plays afterwards. Alright, let's go through quickly through the cards you want to have in your turn 2, so that also explains the mulligan. And of course, Persona Ride in the mulligan hand is always appreciated, and you should also aim for a Persona. Persona is very important. Next card which you really don't want in your hand is this order, which never happened in my case, and I'm glad for that, because it's just a -1. And you, like, these are the most important cards. This not, but these are the most important cards. I also wouldn't mulligan for a Bakubirito. I would even mulligan it back depending on the hand, if I need like a Persona or some grade 2 front row units. And in the best case you could have, I'm gonna go through the best case first, then the second medium case, and then the worst case you can have on your turn 2 play. Best case would be on your turn 1 you can place a Meteor and Soul Charge 1. I'm gonna take just a random heal so I can demonstrate. And on your next turn you discard something, right this. Then your hand, if your hand is like this, oh, çok güzel. Me trying to be funny, Jesus, and then I can't pronounce shit. Let's go. Let's say this is our hand. Also, small tip, because I said you could technically call down triggers behind the Vanguard. If you wanna be really cocky, you can just not show the Bobalmine from the beginning and call it down beneath the grade 1 and already start swinging, and so they won't even try to damage an IU, they will just go in phase, because they know you're gonna counter charge, which also can help you later games, so you can guard, you know that you can guard, but you just have more CB. You also always like CB, especially if you're doing 5 meteors regularly. You really like to be in the heal range for the double heal. So it benefits you if you sometimes call this beneath the grade 1 to already start pushing. Let's say in that case it would be beneath here. It doesn't matter where the Bobalmine is. Or does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because you could first call Barringer, use the skill, you draw a card, which is always nice. It gains 5k. Then you call this one here, place the order, call, and give Barringer again 5k. So this is 20, 18, 25. But if you're going first, this already hits the 10k mark. If they're on grade 2, it's almost the same. It's a 1-2 pass. What I want to say with this, behind the Vanguard, it doesn't matter because of the drive checks if you're going first or second. If you play it like this, you will have here a 30k lane, 18 and 10 without Kubiza skill. Usually you want to have your Kubiza to be on 15, because then it's again the 1-2 pass if they guard with a 15k, so they have to bait it. And if you check here up front, you are in a huge advantage. But this is only an acceptable order to place your units if your opponent is on grade 1, so if you started. Because this is 18k, when you swing with Vanguard first and they check a defensive and they are on grade 2, your 18k lane doesn't come through. And that's why I usually always place it like this, because this is on a 23, so if they are on grade 1, it's still a 10k shield that they can guard if they have a defensive, because 18, and then on 23 they need to get on 28. And this is a 25, and same reason with that, if they get a defensive they need a 10k shield at least, so they're gonna waste a 15k. And the 5k power goes always to Kubiza, or in this line of play to Barringer, but then you don't have the 5k, the magical numbers with the 18 and 23ks. But this doesn't matter actually if you're going second, and you only boost your Vanguard grade 1 when you're second, because you can't attack on your first turn if you started. So that all solves out pretty quickly, and I hope you did understand what I meant here. Because grade 2 game, I think, is the most important part in every Gravidia match. If you can play and draw, of course, and mulligan for the grade 2 game pretty well, you're in a good spot. There is a medium case you could have, and that is if you don't open with a booster. Which means you can just do the same line of play with the Meteor, using Barringer skill, Soul Blast 3, and you need a grade 2 Vanguard for that play, of course. So this is 15 and this is 10. And then you use the order. You still do the same thing. You put it beneath here, because then it's 25, give him 5k, it's a 15, it's a 20 then, because of Barringer skill, then you can swing just for 10. Then there is another version of the medium case, and that is when you just open with one grade 2 rearguard. When you open Barringer and no standard, you have here a 15, you can call down the Shadow Army token, make Barringer 15, 20 in that case with Kubiza, and then you can place this one here. In that case they can swing into Shadow Army token and destroy it in that case, which you really don't like. You really want to keep a Shadow Army token at all cases if possible, but this way you still get through one defensive if your Vanguard hits, so that's also pretty nice. Then there's another case, if you just have a standard. I usually always place it like this, so this 25 and I boost my Vanguard to 15 through its skill, just because I don't want to bait for like no defensive, and for the case they want to get rid of my Shadow Army token, which is really important. You want to keep it as long as it can get. And then we come to the worst case, and that is just Bakubiritos and Meteors. In that case, just call down Shadow Army token, and there are, I saw a lot of people giving the 5k not to Shadow Army token but to Kubiza because of the 1-2 pass or no pass with a 15k shield. I really dislike that, because it's when I attack with it and they don't want to go in for the bait and you don't check a trigger, but they check a defensive trigger. So they are on 18 or 20, your rearguard is on 15, you can't get over it, and your turn stops there. I always put the power on Shadow Army token, so I can swing. They would usually guard, but if I check a trigger, it's gonna be everything on this, and if it's a crit, that's a 30k Shadow Army token on an 8k or 10k Vanguard on turn 2. They're not gonna guard it, and then they can't get the damage and can get the defensive triggers all they want. It doesn't matter because it's the last swing, and in that case, if this hits, get the defensive, this still a 20, still can get over it. Also, they could guard it with 2 15ks, but if they guard with 2 15ks, they have less CB, and on your next turn you can go all out. So, and they have less hand, so it just, in my opinion, favors you if you put the power to Shadow Army token. There's also a rare case where you can have the 2 standers. This is a Barringer, but let's say this is a standard. Usually I would call it. Even if it's 10k standard, it's not that important in my opinion. I will just swing with Bakubirito in the late game. But this is like, if you attack, and in this case I would give the Kubiza the 5k, cause it doesn't matter on Barringer, but this is, creates the one to pass scenario. And if I check a front in this case, it's huge. And that's the reason why I attack with this if I have 2 standers, not this. I'm gonna change it real quick, who cares. Probably you guys. In this scenario I would call down the standard. I would not call down the Barringer if I didn't have the Meteor in the first turn. I would rather save up the Barringer for next turn when I ride on Gravidia, so I can get the Sober's free draw 1 and plus 5k. Because a 20k in the late game, in the first grade 3 turn, is like a 20k standalone, and if you have like a Bobalmine or an Abee, 28 already. So you instantly reach on your first grade 3 turn magical numbers. And that's why I would always keep this on the grade 3 turn, because I don't want to call Barringer without using its skill. Alright, that's it for the deck profile. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't took too much time to explain the grade 2 stuff and like that. I hope you did get through it. In my opinion, the Gravidia list is pretty solved. Like, there are 1 to 2 small changes, like I play 2 Barringer, 2 standard, some other play 3 standard, 1 Barringer, others play 4 standard, only 1 Barringer, and cut another G1. And yeah, that's just small stuff, but I'm pretty confident that how I build it with the ratios, that this is probably the best. But it's always depending on the matchups and on the on what is the meta right now in your locus, in the BCS. Because of the heal triggers, you could put some others in there. If I knew I play only against Gravidia and stuff like that, I would probably put more Barringer in it. I chose like a mid to more Gravidia mid and Barrows, but let that put aside. But I prepared myself to face more Gravidias. I faced 0. Yeah, it's always meta depending, that's what I want to say. There are small changes that the player can do to provide a better matchup in these games for your weaknesses, especially. Not just as a player, but also as a deck, the verse matchup and stuff like that. But in my opinion, Gravidia is the best deck besides Nirvana. Nirvana can high roll with triggers, with free checks, with Amelia and stuff like that pretty hard too. It can hit hard, but I think if you pilot Gravidia well and you don't brick like a shithole and you check some triggers, not double triggers, not talking about that, but like 1 trigger every drive check, yeah, that's already more than I usually do if I play tests. But you know what I mean. If you wanna know the matchups of my BCS Osnabrück, check out the last video. It should be like here or something if I don't forget it. Here, right above my trophy. Here. Okay, enough cringe. Subscribe, leave a like.